You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marnie Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Jessie Bennett, finding calm and joy through mindfulness. All right. Welcome, everyone. Today's episode, another amazing show in store. Today, I have Jessie Bennett. She is the author of 4 books. She's a yoga and Pilates teacher, a wellness expert, and a mom. She's based in my old home state of California. She writes and illustrates children's books that are made to help children regulate their nervous system through practices seen in yoga. And her first book, called The Yoga House, was inspired by her daughter who had a difficult time falling asleep. And they started meditating together and breathing together, and lots of magic happened. And Jessie's mission is to really teach goodness, love, and kindness to children and their families. And I don't know why my kids are all grown up, but I'm really on this like advocacy for young people right now. It's like my passion. So I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like when you think about the idea that, you know, our kids are sponges, obviously, they're watching how we manage our emotions and regulate our nervous systems. How do you teach this without, you know, over giving them more information than they're capable of handling, you know, so that they're not like identified, like I have trouble sleeping, I need to breathe, like there's something wrong with me. How do you navigate that?
That is such a great question, because if we come on too strong with anything, then the conversation is over, right?
Right.
So it's really how we as parents or, you know, caregivers, we show up for them, and it's how we show up for ourselves. And so I realized, especially when I was creating my first book, I started really with that meditation, and I noticed she was having a hard time falling asleep. And I thought, what can we do? And I went back to when she was an infant, and I would just lay her on me and breathe.
Right.
And that's how it started. And so truly, and especially as my kids get older, I realize they feel everything that I put out. And so it really has me more self-aware too about the energy I'm giving them. And so it always starts from within with us, right? The energy that we feel is what others are going to feel. And then our kids get us. And so then it's magnified. So if I try to embody calm and mindfulness and responding instead of reacting, then I feel like they find that within themselves without me saying, hey, you're having a hard time with this. Say, hey, let's breathe together. Let's just connect. And I find that's what resonates with my kids. And it seems to be helping when I go visit schools. I notice it really does just embody. When we embody it, they feel it too, and they find it within.
I love this. I remember when my kids were like, how old were they? Like maybe 8. My oldest was 10. So 10, 6, and let's say 2, I think. And I went and I did this retreat, and I sort of first got introduced to this whole idea of like stillness and meditation. And so at the end of the retreat, they gave us these recordings. It was back in the day when you had like a CD. And I remember my kids were like, oh, I can't sleep or whatever. And I was like, just listen to this. Anyway, and after a while, they were like, and it was a guy's voice. It was just like, it was a meditation, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were talking one time. I heard them were like, I love that guy that guy puts me right out. They were like, can we just listen to that guy's voice? Because they didn't know it was a meditation. They just thought it was like, you know, some soothing, calming thing. And so to this day, I joke about how, you know, I was really good at just like knocking him out with like some old guy talking.
I love it. And that's the thing. We don't have to name it. We just can give them a tool, and all of a sudden it's in their toolkit, but we don't have to be like, I was giving you a guided meditation every night, which now could be any app that, you know, look at you were so ahead of it. You were so ahead
Who knew?
Who knew? You were on it.
Who knew?
I love that.
And I think the other thing too, that's really interesting. So my kids now are like in their early to late 20s, right? And they know that 75% of the time in the morning, like I'm going to be meditating. So they'll text me and they'll be like, are you awake or are you meditating? Or, right? Because I'm modeling that idea of checking in with yourself and stillness. And so I think the other thing that you're talking about here, which I want to highlight, is that if you're making it mean something about yourself, that's negative, then that will also be transmitted. So it's almost like we need to normalize this idea of stillness. So now that you're expanding this message, when you go into schools, like what's the vibe in schools these days with these kids? Because I know that they are different than when my kids were young, and probably when your kids were real younger too.
I love going into schools. It's my favorite thing to do. I go in and I read my books, which have the message of kindness and just loving yourself. And it's really beautiful. I feel like kids are open to it. They're here for it. And for those who it needs to land, it lands. I get really wonderful, sweet hugs afterwards. I've heard things from fourth graders that say, you know what, I wasn't feeling good about myself, and now I feel better about myself. I was having a really hard day. I feel better, more connected. And so I think it is going in and just saying, you know what, I tell them the reason I go in is because I believe in them. And I believe in the power that they have to make the world a better place. But to do that, they have to love themselves first. So my job when I go in and get to connect to these kids is to light them up and just remind them how important they are and how loved they are. And that's kind of what I want them to feel when they hear my books or my words. And so if they can feel that, then they can go out and be a little bit more kind to the world, but it has to start with within. But I feel like the vibe is that they're here for it. Like, especially the kids that I'm visiting now, they didn't get as many visitors during COVID years.
Right.
They're still in elementary school, or they're just on the cusp of leaving elementary school. And so to have someone come in and say, I believe in you. I believe that you can do good in, your day, which could just be holding the door for someone or saying something kind. But to be able to do those actions, we have to be kind to ourselves first. I feel like on some level it's landing, at least with some kids.
Yeah, no, I think it's really great. I was just talking to another parenting expert, and she was talking about how because of COVID and a lot of different other things that are going on, these kids aren't learning how to cope with their own discomfort, awkward social situations. They're retreating to video games. They're socializing online, right? So whereas in the past, it was sort of like just part of our evolution as adolescents or growing up, we would go out there, we'd be awkward teenagers. We'd we'd get bruised and battled along the way, but we would learn. So when you're thinking about listeners who are like, okay, I want to teach my kids or my grandkids or my nieces or nephews, how do I start to sit with uncomfortable feelings through yoga, through breath work, through these movements that are age appropriate? What are some of the things that our listeners can do to start to teach this, again, without making it weird or woo-woo?
Totally. That's the thing. And it doesn't have to be weird or woo-woo. It's seriously, and that's something I try to put in my books too. And I hope that it makes mindfulness easy, accessible, and not woo-woo. So when we just come home to our breath and we sit with how we feel, because like you said, there's so many things out there to numb and not help us actually tap into where we are. We can actually assess where we are without making it too in our heads, but just coming home to our breath. So usually when I visit a school for yoga or for reading, we take a big breath together, and it's just amazing to watch energy settle, because I always tell my kids and kids that I get to meet, it just helps us come home to ourselves. It's our superpower. So for families or caregivers or aunts, uncles, cousins, anything that want to start to find a connection to tap into how kids truly feel, or just a little bit of mindfulness, I always start with simple breath. I'm happy to share tools, and I have them in the back of my books. I have meditations in the back of my books. But honestly, we always take, when I go read to schools, we take a big breath in through our nose and a big breath out, and we just feel ourselves settle. And I feel like once we can come home to ourselves and help kids do that, then they can sit with how they feel. And it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to feel everything that comes up. And, but I feel like mindfulness can just start with simple breath.
So one of the first things to do is to just say, let's take a deep breath. And again, it's not like, okay, I'm going to teach you this thing and it's called mindfulness. And what I need you to do, you're going to really make it for them on their level.
Exactly. And I feel like breath can meet everyone where they are. And it's neat to see how I love breath. I feel like it's made a huge difference for me in really challenging moments just as a mom. But I see how my kids use it. Like I see how my kids use the breath that we practice. And I'm not saying we're practicing breath work or we're doing yoga right now, or they actually ask for meditation at night. But I see how when we've had some really real challenging times, how they tap into their breath. And even my husband too, who's not like a big mindfulness guy, but he's used to me, but he uses it and it makes me so happy.
Oh, I love that. I think the other thing I see too is parents talking about, their kids being difficult, right? And I was at a situation a few weeks ago with families with little kids, which, I haven't been in that situation in a long time. Yeah. And it reminded me of the old way, is sit down, telling kids, calm down, stop running, relax, right? Like using words, but not actually doing it with them, right? Like, hey, hey, Jeff, nobody's named Jeff anymore probably, but, let's just take a couple of breaths together, right? Yeah. And bring it down. I love that. So when you think about the idea of prenatal, right? Do you believe that when we are experiencing stress and anxiety and worry during pregnancy, that those things are then obviously transmitted to the baby and things like that?
Not a doctor, married to a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. Definitely not a OB-GYN, but I feel like on the flip side, so I can't speak to the negative and how it would harm. Right. But I can say that the self-regulation that I worked on during both of my pregnancies and that calm and that connection, it gave me hope that my babies were feeling what I was so trying deeply to connect with myself and with them with. So I feel on the flip side, the positive, I have to believe that my breathing, my meditation, my yoga practice, my hopes, my dreams, all of that I had while they were growing within me, I have to believe that they were feeling that goodness and that it benefited them. And we know that breath and movement and exercise benefits prenatal. And so for that, I definitely believe, and I can only imagine that any stress we put on ourselves, any hard stress and hardship, how could it not affect the whole? Right. So again, it goes back to like how you're responding to stressor situations is really going to be filtered through, not just when you have your kids, when you're with your kids, but in that prenatal experience. And what a great time to practice it. I always talk about to myself in my head first, but then also to my kids, respond without reacting. So take that breath, take that moment. And it makes us so much less reactive as humans and less impulsive in a society where we're used to everything happening so fast and reacting so fast. We can take a beat for ourselves to react. So I think that also helps without getting too amped up.
Right. Exactly. Well, okay. So let me ask you another question here about your book, because I know that you have affirmations and you have nighttime meditations and you're both the yoga house. And I know you also have some journaling exercises. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about are we teaching our kids to journal? What are some of the simple questions, or are you, depending upon their age, are you doing it with them and like writing down what they're saying? How does that work with little ones?
The journaling can be any way you want, just like the mindfulness. So the journaling questions can be questions, conversation starters. You know, what made you feel proud today? How were you kind? What lights you up? What brings a smile to your face? What's a dream you have? These are things that, you know, just like how you had a meditation CD and you didn't call it meditation, these could be simple ways for someone who's sharing a book, my books or any books with kiddos, to ask questions, especially if you don't know where to begin. But because they're open-ended, you get more than a yes, no.
Yeah.
And so whether a kiddo wants to draw their response, write the response, or just talk about it, it's just a way to begin. And just opening up the toolbox of saying this is a way to connect, because those answers can change every day. So you can say, how were you kind today? What brought a smile to your face? What was challenging and how did you get through it? So those are just ways to connect and tap in. So those ways to tap in, that's an easy way to just tap in with someone that you love and how they're feeling, and whether it's high or low or somewhere in between, it is all good.
I love this. I used to be a nursery school teacher, probably why I'm so passionate about this. But my creative teacher mind just went crazy. I'm like, we could take these journaling prompts. We could write them on little things. We could put them like in a jar. We could read them at dinner. I used to get these little decks, you know, the little card decks. Mm-hmm. On Friday nights, we would have like our little, every once in a while, we'd have like a family Shabbat dinner, and we would pull a card from the deck, and they were like cute questions. And also we would do, roses and thorns.
Yes.
Right. So we do roses and thorns at before dinner, which it's so funny. My kids got older and they were like super cringy, but then like in high school, their boyfriends would come and they'd all like be like, oh, my mom's going to do this roses and thorns thing. But then literally when my daughter's boyfriend, who, you know, of high school, they're long broken up, but he sent me a message one holiday and he was like, I loved spending all that time in your house when I was a kid, and roses and thorns was my fave. Right. Aww. And so I think like we can be creative in how we're getting our kids to have conversations. What do you say to parents that are like, that's great, Jessie, but my kid doesn't talk. My kid doesn't tell me anything. Like they don't want to talk. They just go in their room. They close their door. They're on their phone, whatever. So good for you, but my kid doesn't talk. What do we say to those people?
Oh man, you know what? I always try to tell myself, and as I just try to model it, I try to connect before I consume. So I try to connect with them, with the world, with what I'm grateful for before I consume my phone or look outward. So first of all, I feel for them, because that's really challenging, because we can do it. They're their own people, right?
Yeah.
I think that we never give up because we're the adult. And so
that's so important. Like that is like mic drop, hashtag. I think my experience, again, I don't have kids at this point that are young, but I hear a lot of conversation of adults that are saying like, why bother? You know, like it's too late. You don't understand. It's different now. And I'm like, wait, but you're adult. Their little brains physically they may act and dress older, but like biologically their brain, so far as I know, like our brain biology is still the same, right?
Right. Exactly. So just remember you're the adult. And even if you just sit with them and just be like, I'm here when you're ready to chat. Like, I care. I love you. I want to know. And just keeping that door open. And I just always think about that. You're the adult. And don't give up. And just always know that you're there for the highs and lows. And I tell my daughter's 14 and she tells me every second of her day. So I'm so grateful for that. Like, I mean, every second. And I said to her the other day, I want you to know that whether it's a high or low, like I want to be the first person that you call when something's amazing, but I want you to know, never be scared, because someone got in a car accident at school, but didn't want to tell their mom they hit a Tesla. And I said, you call me when you hit that Tesla. Right. Like, and I think that just knowing that you can always reopen those doors and just make sure that try to be the adult in their life, that they're not scared to tell the good and the bad.
Right. Because they need to have that unconditional love and support. Like you'll deal with the accident part later, but first of all, just I want to know that you're safe.
Are you okay? Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think that, the proof is, kids are still doing the same stupid shit. Like, right. I don't think that's changed. Maybe they're doing it younger. And as adults, we can have empathy, right? And it does. And I think what I see is like people are connected to this thing of like, we is me, like if you're doing this, it makes me look bad. Or if you do well, it makes me look great. And I think that kids feel that pressure, to feel like, my performance or my, being good or bad is, a reflection or reaction to whatever is going on with my parents. And so when you look at some of these skills that you're teaching then kids when they're younger, how are you or is it possible for them to individuate in a healthy way, right? Like, is it possible? Because I mean, ultimately we want them to do that. I know there's like, I don't even know what the latest term is. Is it helicopter? I don't even know what it is now.
I don't even know. I can only speak to my experience, right? And I have kids that put my husband and I put no pressure on our kids because they put it all on themselves.
Right.
So the only thing we tell them is that we're so proud, not of their grades or performance, of their character. And that's where we just really light them up because, and I talk to my daughter that, like, fantastic. We love that you care about your grades, but we look at the whole of you. So we just really try to focus on there's so much more, and we're not here for perfection. We're here for what makes, you put in the effort, that idea of growth mindset of, you gave your best. I told her, I'm not even going to check your grades because I know that you're doing great. If you're struggling, then we're here to support you. But, there's so much, I see it with her friends who are freshmen in high school, and there's so much pressure. So I just try to say, we look at the whole, we look at learning, we look at how we can support learning because it's for the long game. It's how we deal with challenges. It's how and how we deal with things when we don't get what we expect. And that's okay because we learn more from that often than we do when things go our way. So that's what we try to instill in kids, because I feel like there's so much pressure. And what we're working on now a lot with my daughter and my son is to turn down the outside chatter and turn up your inner voice. So we talk about
I love that. That's amazing. And so how do they become aware of that?
I think it's that, and it all can come back to the breath, is just tuning into themselves and what lights them up. For example, my daughter is in this advanced math class, and her friends who are really driven kids, they're all doubling up on more advanced math for next year. Well, she plays trumpet and is in the band. And I said, I so much care more about you doing what continues to light you up,
right?
Than trying to be impressive on we don't be you. I said, turn down their chatter and say, good for you, and turn up what makes you feel happy and makes you feel whole. And that all just comes back to coming home to yourself, honoring your light, what makes you happy. And so that I feel like the younger we can do that for kids, the louder they can make the voice that makes them happy.
Yeah. And I think to understand what you're saying, Jessie, is that is possible, right?
It's
like
possible.
Kids are totally capable of, listening to what brings them joy, to being discerning. Right. And I think if we decide for them or try to overprotect them from ever failing or having pain or asking any of those questions of themselves, then they're not going to learn those skills in the long term.
That's true.
Yeah. It's when I was in high school, I had this amazing principal. He's still alive, Dr. Plagman, shout out. And the motto of the school was striving to do your very best. And when I was growing up, it was like a joke. My mom would be like, as long as you're striving to do your very best. And so I would say that to my kids all the time.
Love it.
But still, it didn't matter because especially my younger one is constantly hard on herself. And I think that's a really important point. Like they're putting the pressure on themselves. They're watching what's going on around them. They're hearing the other kids talk. They're on social media to whatever extent at whatever age. And so making sure that you remind them that they do have the ability to learn and grow from mistakes and things that don't go well. Again, like projecting our own shit onto our kids is definitely not going to work. Okay, last question for you. When you think about new beginnings, whether it is back to school, changing school, starting a new sport. I was at an event with families the other day, and there were high school kids, and they had to share something, a goal or something. And we were doing like a community thing. And this girl was like 15, and she was like, my goal is I'm starting hockey, and I've never been on a hockey team before, and I'm just going to tell myself I can do it. I was like,
yes,
I love that. So cute, right? But a lot of kids don't start new things or try new things because of that, like, oh, I need to be really good at it, so I'm not going to try, especially I think girls, I have to do it perfect. Otherwise, why bother? So how do you teach young people, parents to navigate through these new beginnings?
I always say go for it. And I always say, why not you? And we are all figuring it out as we go. And you deserve to try things and go put yourself out there and just do it. So that is the message that I give to my kids because they're doing it right now. They're both trying new things for the first time. My daughter said, I've never felt more freshman than this moment of being a freshman. And I said, that's amazing. And my son's trying there in his school. They have different wheels of arts, and he just started ballroom dance. Like,
I love that.
But I think the more same thing that as the adults in their life to model not being afraid to try something new, to do it for the sheer experience of learning. And that's something I try to tell my kids too. It's about the learning and getting to have new experiences. Perfection isn't the goal here. It's about experience. And so I think I would just say that would be it. Perfection isn't the goal. It's the experience and the connections that you're going to make. I always tell my kids, you haven't met all the people that are going to love you, and you haven't done all the things that you are going to love yet. So, just keep going and see what lands and what lights you up.
I think that's so important. I was teaching this life mapping course about a month ago, and I had these grown-ass women map out all these significant turning points in their life, starting from as long as they could remember, and also decisions that they made. And what we ended up coming to when they got to their current life was that these decisions and these significant points, inflection points, strengthened certain skills in us, right? That created this identity. And what I pointed out to them is that doesn't mean that you don't have other skills or other capabilities. It's just that life didn't show you that you can do that, or that you like that, or that you're good at that. And I think if I reverse engineer that to what we're talking about, right, is these kids don't know what they can or can't do. And we want to encourage them to not decide based on what a parent or grandparent says, oh, I was never good at any art, or I was so uncoordinated. That was my thing. And so really looking back and saying okay, great, you're a blank slate. Everything is possible, and reminding them of that. And then being aware of your own, how you speak yourself about because I think people take their own shit and they project it on their kid. They're like, I'm good at math. You're good at math. I'm bad at art. You're bad at art. So we want to really put that aside and encourage the new beginnings.
I love that. And we can all be blank slates. So if we can mirror that the best we can, and not think that we are somehow stuck in old habits. We can break that chain any day, and we can show them you can try new things at any age. So it can start with us.
I love this. Thank you so much for being here, Jessie. Ladies, the links to these books are all in the show notes. I know we're like, when you're listening to this, it may or may not be around a holiday season or a birthday, but whether you have kids in your life or new parents, or you are one yourself, these are great books. They're like, reading age 4 to 7-ish. They've got these, great stories. They've got Feel Better Toolkit. They've got these journaling questions, affirmations, be the light you want to see in the world, and make sure you check out everything that Jessie is doing. You can also find her on Instagram. We'll have a link to that, Jessie.Bennett, 2 N's, 2 T's, 2 S's. And we had a lot of interesting conversation here today. So remember, the name of the show is Life Check Yourself. So instead of pointing the finger out at other people, think this person really put it back. What can you do to be a light and to be a model in your own life so that other young people can be inspired by how you are doing your thing? Jessie, thanks for being here, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Listen, if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know you're not alone, and you don't have to settle for it. I've created a free quiz to help you pinpoint what's draining your energy and exactly how you can fix it. So head over to decodeyourdestinyquiz.com and take the 60-second quiz right now. That's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And if you're ready to dive deeper, you can book a free no-obligation consultation at marnibatista.com/private coaching. That's Marni, M-A-R-N-I, Batista, B-A-T-T-I-S, as in Sam, T-A.com/private coaching, all one word. Let's take the first step to creating a life you love on your terms. I'm Marni, and I'll see you next time.